The Week 14 Sunday around the NFL that was. Did the Kansas City Chiefs get screwed by the referees, or is Mahomes overreacting? Ravens walk-off win in overtime against the Rams, and we have a new leader in the NFC East and in the NFC as a whole. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock and Matt Williamson here with you at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are one. Just subscribe up on YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's go to the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a big story, and most of the story is because of how apoplectic, I guess could be the word, that Patrick Mahomes was after this call, after an unbelievable play with Travis Kelce, throwing the ball back to Kadarius Toney. And it was the Buffalo Bills that ended up defeating the Kansas City Chiefs 20-17. Huge game for the Bills, by the way. 7-6 now, 8-5 are the Kansas City Chiefs. They're in an okay spot, but they're kind of stumbling a little bit as we hit the end portion of this season, the last quarter of this regular season. But I want to focus first on the call that everyone's made such a big deal about. And, you know, the referees did a good job after the game, the pool reporters asking him about the call, and basically it was egregious. He was lined up too far over the line for a warning in this situation. And then you see the still shots of it, and you look at the replays, and Kadarius Toney was way too far. He was a half yard past the ball. And my initial reactions here on this, Matt, are Kadarius Toney, you've been playing football your whole life. What were you looking at to line up there? And I understand where maybe Toney's coming from, and especially where Patrick Mahomes is coming from, and Andy Reid after the game, where they're coming from, because it's just not something that gets called a lot. And you see such a huge play get called back because of a penalty on something that never gets called and usually gets fixed before the play starts if someone's close. And it's kind of like, I kind of agree with everybody. I get why Mahomes is pissed off after that kind of a call in that moment of the game. And I get why the ref has to throw the flag. Toney, what are you doing? Line up behind the ball. Like, it's the easiest thing you could possibly do on any given play is not line up a half yard past the ball. It wasn't even close. He's looking at the ball too. And so I don't know what he's looking at. It didn't impact the play. And it's something that just never gets called. It's been called a lot more. I think it was called twice last year, or maybe 0 times last year and once the year before, or something like 3 total calls in the last 2 seasons. But they have called it more this year for whatever reason. And, you know, we can go down the officiating rabbit hole. But so I get why Mahomes is angry about it in that moment. But I think when Mahomes goes back home and sees it and sleeps on it, he'll be like, gosh, dang it. Why were you lined up so damn far over the line of scrimmage, Kadarius Toney? But and I think back to Lane Johnson and actually the Kansas City Chiefs' own right tackle.
Right, yeah.
Right, that are full starting on every play. Why are they not? It's like, call the stinking rules. And if something's generally let go, you got to keep letting it go. But in this case, he was too far. So I almost kind of agree with everybody. I'm not hating Mahomes as much as everybody else is about why he was so mad about it. I get why he was mad about it, but I also get why they threw the flag and it was the right call.
And it was a super cool play, obviously, too.
From a fan is like, I had this same thought with the 49ers, and we'll get to that game with Mitch Wishnowsky's a fake punt, and he's running down the field 30 yards for a first down, and there was like an illegal block on the play. And it's like, well, look, the play doesn't get to last in the box scores and in the annals of pro football history, but we get to remember it right? It's going to last forever in my memory. And that's how that play was for the Chiefs. So that throwback. And I mean, I feel like there's potential. It probably won't start in the NFL. Some college team could level the playing field by just going all out rugby style and getting good at plays like that, especially in a comeback sort of a mode.
Oh, so many things to talk about here then. So it dawned on me, like I didn't do it, but they put a highlight tape together every year I was at Pitt for recruits. It would psych you up, and you leave those plays on, you don't tell them it came back, or things like that. I mean, you leave all those on the highlight tape. I've thought for years, lateraling in general has been an underutilized aspect. And real quick, I mean, when my son did flag, if the ball hit the ground, it was dead. They didn't want a bunch of kids diving in. I'm like, just lateral it like crazy. I mean, nothing to lose. Anyway, first off, Tony, I felt this before yesterday, is maybe the least trustworthy and reliable player in the whole league. I mean, he's always hurt. He doesn't really run routes. He kind of beats to his own drummer. I mean, I don't know what his head for the game is, but it sure doesn't seem strong by any stretch.
Yeah.
This is on him. I mean,
right.
He screwed up, and I think there should have been a flag. I understand why you'd be super upset about it. It could have been corrected before the snap. But as you mentioned, this year it's been more of a point of emphasis. Does Mahomes know that? Does Reed know that? Does every coach and quarterback in the league know that? I don't know. But frankly, my take on it is Mahomes is just pissed. I mean, I think he's just frustrated with his teammates and wants to attack somebody, but doesn't want to say Kadarius Toney's an idiot and none of these guys run the damn route I want because they're too young, and one guy I trust and I'm losing my mind, and we're better than this, and the window's shut, and we should have put the Bills out of their misery, and now we might have to play them again, and it's all here for the taking, and it's not my fault, and I can't call out my team, and I'm mad. I mean, like, that's my take on it. And then he acted a little childish.
Yep, I totally agree. So 8-5 now, Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes didn't have a great day. 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 25 of 43 for 271 yards. They were without their starting running back, so it was kind of a mixed bag in the running game. Travis Kelce, the leading receiver, 6 for 83. Rashee Rice is kind of coming along as the guy. I think he tied Travis Kelce with the team lead in targets, and they sort of dwarfed everybody else. So I think that's where we're at now. Your number one wide receiver, not your number one receiver. That's still Kelce. Your number one wide receiver in Kansas City, I think, going forward until further notice, is rookie Rashee Rice, 7 for 72. And he did have the touchdown reception from Patrick Mahomes in this one. And he can't count on anybody else.
Yeah, I think he's just losing his mind. I mean, like you mentioned Rice and Kelce, but the dudes touching the ball in this game are Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jerick McKinnon, Tony, Valdez Scantling, Watson. Like this, that's not Super Bowl level stuff. And I like Rice. I think you're 100% right, and I think he's got a bright future. But anything down the field is a nightmare for this team. I mean, Rice is still being used underneath. I mean, his long catch was 19.
And Rice's ceiling is like kind of a number 2 guy anyway.
I think so too.
I thought he was drafted too high, and he's fine, and I think he's going to play up with Mahomes, and he can play better. But they're going to be looking for someone who can be more of a trustworthy number 1 wide receiver in the offseason. They just have to. And the thing is, when you hold the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen to 20 points, you did your job on the defensive side of the ball.
Yep. And I really like what Allen's doing. I do like what the Bills are doing. I don't know if it's a Dorsey being gone thing, but they're throwing the ball to James Cook a lot more, an extension of the run game, making life a little bit easier on Allen. So the Bills are dangerous. I mean, I've said this 5 million times in the last 3 weeks when you and I started the conversation. The Bills can win the Super Bowl. I just don't know if they can get the playoffs.
One step closer, though. Now over 500, 7-6 are those Buffalo Bills. Strikingly similar lines, by the way, for Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. 25 of 43 and 23 of 42, 1 touchdown, 1 interception for both of those guys. So very evenly matched game. This time the Buffalo Bills walk away with that W. We'll talk a little bit more about seeding and some of the impacts here. And I think we're going to have a lot more conversations about seeding going down the stretch run here in this NFL season. We got a lot more games to get to, though, here on our Takeaways Review Week 14 episode, Monday episode here on Peacock and Williamson. Got to talk about the Ravens and the return in overtime walk-off win over the pesky Los Angeles Rams. And, of course, the Cowboys, who now overtake the Philadelphia Eagles for the top spot in the the NFC East for now. Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Is your family big gift givers during the holidays? Whether or not your family gives gifts or time or money during the holidays, you get to define how you give to yourself. And don't put so much pressure on yourself this holiday season. Maybe it's up to you to cook for the entire family, right? And so sometimes there's big families getting together and everyone's taken care of. Got to get gifts for everybody. And there can be a lot of pressure involved in the holidays as well, whether or not you celebrate or you don't. And the holidays is a great time to give to yourself. So whether it's by starting therapy, going easier on yourself during the tough moments, or treating yourself to a day of complete rest, remember to give to yourself and give yourself some love this holiday season. So if you've been thinking about giving therapy a try BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. And in the season of giving, you have a chance to give a gift to yourself and get what you need with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. That's code LOCKEDON. BetterHelp.com. HELP.com/lockedon. How about those Baltimore Ravens? And I don't know what I think, even with a loss here, and it's a little bit difficult because I think McVay had some troubles getting some stinking play calls in some key moments in this game as well late. But the Rams are at 6-7, and it feels like they could potentially have the coach of the year with what the Rams are doing. And they hung with the Ravens all game long. Matthew Stafford making big time throws in this game. And it was the Ravens, though, with the walk-off overtime return. Tylan Wallace, 37-31. Ravens improved to 10-3 over those Los Angeles Rams.
Yeah, I think McVay is my coach of the year right now. If I had one vote, considering we thought this was maybe a first overall type of team, all this young Ross, who are these people on defense, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, who are their O-linemen? And they're playing really well. Stafford's playing really well. I hope the Rams get in the playoffs for my viewing pleasure. Now, the Ravens, we don't talk a lot of special teams on here, but the Ravens are always at the top of the league in all special team metrics. I mean, they're great on teams. Some of it's because of Tucker, but it's also a Harbaugh trait. The Rams are at the bottom. And the reason for the Rams being so poor on special teams is because the way they're built, they can't afford that $3 million safety or linebacker that is only a core special teamer. They don't have any of those guys. They just have a bunch of rookies out there learning on the fly. And that stuff's going to bite you. And that's exactly what happened here. But I thought this was a whale of a game. I mean, I thought it was a pretty evenly matched game. The Rams moved the ball pretty consistently, and the Ravens are strong. I think they're probably the best team in the AFC. I want to watch Miami tonight, but if we're power ranking the AFC, I think the Ravens are one for me.
11 teams fighting for playoff spots in the AFC, but it is
nuts.
The Baltimore Ravens that are now the 1 seed at 10-3, the only 10-win team in the AFC right now, in the driver's seat to have that bye in the first week of the playoffs. Some big games still coming up on that Ravens schedule. And speaking of 1 seeds, we've got Ravens 49ers coming up on Christmas as well.
How about that?
The 1 seed in the NFC now, Matt, because of the Cowboys defeating the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday and just soundly thumping the Philadelphia Eagles. 33-13 was the final score. Dak Prescott, a couple more touchdown passes, 271 yards passing. Really a rough go defensively and offensively for the Eagles the last couple of weeks. And Nick Bosa, after the 49ers beat the Eagles last week, said, I hope that Cowboys were watching because we gave them the blueprint. And maybe they did, because this does not look like the same Eagles team. I know they played a couple of difficult games here against the Cowboys and the 49ers back-to-back, but the Eagles, who have had the 1 seed in the NFC going back to early last year, because remember, they got off onto a hot streak both of the last 2 seasons. So we're talking 15 months. The Eagles have been the 1 seed, including going to the Super Bowl for the NFC. They dropped from 1 to 5 after this loss on Sunday night to the Dallas Cowboys. And it is now the Cowboys via tiebreaker that lead the NFC East. They jump into the 2 seed with the Lions loss. The Niners now in the 1 seed control their own destiny, but the Cowboys and Eagles have split this year. So you go to division record tiebreaker, but the Eagles have more games against the NFC and the NFC East this year. So the Eagles still control their own destiny as far as the 2 seed goes. If the Eagles win out, they will jump back over the Cowboys, win the East, and have the 2 seed unless the 49ers lose a game, then potentially have the 1 seed again in the NFC. So this one is not done, and the Eagles' schedule the rest of the way is a lot easier than both the 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, at least the Eagles got over their brutal stretch. And considering the recent success of the organization, their strengths at the line of scrimmage, etc., if I know power ranks don't matter, but I bet this week right now is probably the lowest they'll power rank all year. Like, I wouldn't be happy at all if I'm the AFC South champion or the Lions and, oh, great, the Eagles are coming to town in week 1 of the playoffs. Great, So I think they'll be just fine. Can they hang with the Cowboys and Niners? That's a different conversation. Can the Cowboys hang with the Niners? That's their next test. I mean, they finally got that signature win. But kind of like you said, I mean, there was a defensive score here for Philly, but this game was never in doubt or, I mean, Dak to me, I don't know if you got the email from our buddy Ross, but they wanted us to vote on MVPs, and Dak was my number 1 vote. And I think he's playing phenomenal. And, Brandon Cooks of the world and Ferguson's and those guys are really key contributors. And it's funny, my son and I are watching the game, and we're talking about Zach Martin and Tyron Smith and, Lane Johnson and Kelsey. I'm like, there's 4 Hall of Fame offensive linemen out there. I mean, and they got some good things going.
They got some good things going. Problems in the back 7 for the Eagles that are not going to get fixed. And the passing game's struggling. Do you point to the secondaries? Stephon Gilmore did a good job here, but I think there's something else happening. Look, the Eagles played 2 really good defenses here back to back, so that just could be it. But this is not a juggernaut team, the Philadelphia Eagles. I think it's clear they're not as good a team as they were last year when they rode it all the way to the Super Bowl.
Agreed. I think the Chiefs and Eagles have both taken a step back from where they were last year. There was nowhere to go but back. I mean, they were Super Bowl teams. I mean, it doesn't mean they can't meet again in the Super Bowl and get hot, but there are concerns. I don't blame Hurts, but he's not the elite passer, tear you apart guy that, Dak is at this point, or Stafford, or, some other guys in the NFC, maybe even your boy Purdy, just pinpoint the ball where it needs to be.
I mean, right now, if I'm voting, it's Dak 1, it's Purdy 2. The 49ers handling business.
That was my vote too.
Against the Seattle Seahawks. 28-16, 49ers beat the Seahawks. The Niners now 1 seed, as I mentioned, 10-3. The Seahawks in a tough spot amongst a bunch of teams now. 6-7 are the Seahawks, and they've got some work to do. And by the way, Seahawks Eagles Monday night next week, which is huge for both of these football teams. So that's going to be a good one. Bounce backs needed for both of those teams. Brock Purdy, the thing that's helping him right now that he didn't have earlier in the season is passing volume. He's now number 2 in the NFL in passing yards, just total passing yards. So it's not just efficiency now. 368 passing yards in this one, 2 more touchdowns, bounce back from an early interception, and threw some nice deep balls as well. So in the eyes of voters, if you're talking MVP, seeing Purdy put up just raw stats and counting stats and making big throws, downfield throws, which he's perfectly capable of doing because he's a really accurate thrower down the field. He's not going to throw your Josh Allen 60-yard bombs, but he's an accurate deep ball thrower, which is huge. And he's aggressive. He's an aggressive quarterback. Against popular belief of people who don't watch a lot of Brock Purdy and the 49ers and think it's just everybody else doing the job. Purdy's helping himself out there, but it's kind of Dak's award to lose right now. I think Purdy's too. And the 49ers are just humming offense, defense, everywhere. And when you got Deebo Samuel doing what he's doing right now, Christian McCaffrey 72 yards in the first play of the game with this massive hole behind Trent Williams. I mean, it's just this is the best team in the NFL when they're on, and they are absolutely on right now.
Yeah, 100% on agree with everything with the Niners. I think you got to throw in just Deebo's contributions the last couple of weeks are off the charts. I mean, anybody that has Deebo in fantasies are very happy right now. He's been phenomenal. Now, I don't have much more to add to your Niners. I think they're clearly number 1 in the power ranks. They're humming. I think they're clearly the Super Bowl favorite right now. But you kind of saw this coming with Seattle when in week 11 they lost at the Rams. And then you're like, I mean, immediately I thought, oh no, because they got Niners, Dallas, Niners, Eagles still. I mean, so the last 3 look easy, but might not matter. I mean, Seattle didn't even have Geno Smith in this game. Is he going to be back? I mean, it's just such a brutal stretch here hitting at the wrong time for Seattle.
And for Seattle, you have to hope that you're catching the Eagles at the right time. The blueprint maybe is out there, and Geno gets that one extra week of rest, and then and he's ready to go next week. And so it was almost like a concession by the Eagles here, or the Seahawks. They were like, let's get Geno ready for next week, and they put Drew Lock out there. Made a nice touchdown throw to DK early, and then that was it.
And then their last 3 are very winnable, but if they lose the Eagles and win the last 3, that's only 9. I don't know if that gets you in the NFC now. I mean, teams like the Rams and Packers are better than them right now.
New leader in the NFC South as well, Matt. Let's talk about that in some quarterback notes. Jake Browning continuing to do it for the Cincinnati Bengals, and CJ Stroud injury, which is unfortunate, and some complete ineptitude with Las Vegas next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Get $20 off your first ticket purchase. More on that in a moment, because when you're buying tickets, when you're getting ready for your next big event, whether it's an NFL football game, college football game, baseball, basketball, hockey, whatever sporting event, whatever music, concert, comedy, theater events near you, Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all those events, so you don't have to worry, and it's not a hassle getting tickets to your next event, even with last-minute tickets. Killer last-minute deals. All-in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guarantee. Game Time takes all of that guesswork out of buying tickets. And I love the all-in prices, because I hate those hidden fees that hit you right at the end, right when you're checking out. All-in prices at Game Time show your total up front, so you know you're getting a great deal without the hidden fees. And then in a couple taps, you buy your tickets. They're right there in the app. You don't have to go fishing through email, and you're off and running at your event. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. How about Jake Browning, Matt? We got the Cincinnati Bengals that are making a run without Joe Burrow, and another team like the Bills getting out of that hole and now above 500. 7-6 are the Cincinnati Bengals, defeating the now 7-6 Indianapolis Colts, who they are battling for one of those wild card spots. And a big win, a not close win. 34-14 was the final here, with Jake Browning's Bengals over the Indianapolis Colts. 275 yards passing and a couple of tutties for Browning in this one. Really good back-to-back games for him.
There was a note from the Cowboy game I forgot while you were reading the read that I had to throw out there. Their kicker's the man, by the way. Oh, the Cowboys kicker is the man.
I don't know. Didn't even kick in college football and is just perfect. I mean, he's unbelievable.
Unbelievable. He's like, all I got to do is kick this ball through that uprights. I don't have to play soccer for 60 minutes and run around. All I got to do is do that. Like, this is easy.
And
that's the way he feels.
60-yarders.
Yeah, nothing to it. Boom. Just put it thhrorough those big. I mean, I can put it in the corner of a goal from 30 yards away and beat two defensemen and a goalie, let alone all I gotta do is put it between those uprights. Nothing to it. But Browning, really interesting, because I studied him heavy. His first start was, against the Steelers. And I thought, man, this guy's got guts. He's got accuracy. And it didn't really show up in his first start, but the last two, he's like one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. And now, I don't think the Colts and Jags secondary are phenomenal, and throwing to Jamar Chase helps and all that. And they're running the ball well, and they have a nice screen game going. They're using Brown and Mixon more in the passing game, which is overdue.
Yeah, big catch and run by Brown. Yeah.
So I like where they're at. I mean, I'm not willing to say that Browning's the next Purdy or somebody like that, but he might be Burrow's long-term backup and keep them in this hunt where I thought they were dead.
He's proving, and he won a lot of games in college.
He did.
I think, gutsy, accurate, smart. That's what you need in a backup quarterback that can come in and win you some games and not lose you some games. So if he's above the line for the Bengals, I mean, that's huge for this team that maybe they're not out of it. So it'll be a fun team to watch down the stretch, and kind of playing with house money with no Joe Burrow for Jake Browning and the Bengals the rest of the way.
You mentioned he was really productive in college, and I think there is something to that, because he threw the most touchdown passes in high school history. He had like 90 some touchdowns as a senior. And I only bring that up because I think he knows he's good, and he plays like I've been the best player on the field since high school. You know what I mean? Just his mentality.
And you bring up Purdy. That's the recipe, right?
Yeah.
Big time college or big time high school player, but wasn't height, weight, speed guy. So didn't go to Alabama. Wasn't highly recruited, but Mr. Football in his own state. kind of production in high school, and then you start for a million years in college, and you are battle tested. You play a bunch of big games in some big stadiums, and you throw a whole bunch of footballs, and you go through a whole bunch of seasons as a leader and put in tough situations. And that has to help your development going into the NFL. And it's so difficult for some of these quarterbacks to play 1 year. And it's like, okay, good. Now you're ready. It's like, no, you're not going to be ready yet.
Right. I mean, you look at like Haskins and Trubisky and a lot of these 1 year starters in college that are toolsy, but don't really know what they're doing, as opposed to, like you said, he's thrown a lot of footballs, you know what I mean? And knows how to win, knows what he can do, knows what he can't. It's something to that.
Chicago Bears knock off the Lions. So the Lions now were trying to be the fourth 10-win seed in the NFC. They lose that bid to the Bears, and Justin Fields throwing touchdown to DJ Moore.
DJ Moore looks great.
Right. Yeah, dude. Yeah. And running a touchdown in as well. 28-13 Bears now 5-8. Now the Bears aren't in the playoff picture. They're definitely they're the best team that's kind of record wise out of it. I would say the 6-win teams are in it. The Bears I would consider definitely not in it in the NFC. But beating a division rival that is definitely in it, that is leading your division in the Lions was huge. So good win by the Bears. Lions still have some work to do there with seeding in the NFC.
Yeah, real quick on the Lions. We've been talking about this week after week, and it's gone on for well over a month. Their defense is crumbling. I mean, the defense is just not close to where it was at the beginning of the year, particularly the back seven, but they lost Aleem McNeil, and it's just not been playoff caliber. We know Goff road versus home is an issue, and it kind of showed up a little bit in this game, like very little from St. Brown and Laporta and guys that are always consistent contributors. But I think the Bears might be the most interesting team in the league. You know, do you fire the staff? Do you keep Fields? They keep winning. They go to Cleveland, host Arizona, host Atlanta, go to Green Bay. Like, they might win 3 more games and be on a roll, and Fields looks good, and DJ Moore, and I didn't know if Montez Sweat was worth that pick, but boy, their defense is a heck of a lot better since then. And they got a secondary, and they have all these draft capital. Like, I'm in on the Bears, man.
Cap space as well. Like, they can go in a number of directions. It's going to be a very interesting offseason, and there's still 4 more weeks to evaluate what you're going to do there. So really interesting end of season for the Bears for non-playoff reasons, and what Justin Fields' future is in all of that. And to me, it's either you start over coach and quarterback, or you add to coach and quarterback and keep them all. That's where I'm at with this team right now. But how about a new leader in the NFC South? The Buccaneers beat the Falcons. These two teams now at 6-7, along with I think there's it feels like there's 12 6-7 teams in the NFC, but there's 3 NFC South teams. Saints beat the Panthers. Panthers holding on to that 1 pick for the Bears. 28-6, easy win for the Saints at home. They're 6-7. They are, though, behind the Buccaneers, as are now the Falcons, all at 6-7. Rams and Seahawks at 6-7 as well after 14 weeks. 29-25, big win for the Buccaneers over the Falcons.
I don't know what to make of that division except for it's bad. I mean, I thought Atlanta did some good things offensively, including Ritter. Baker, I think, has been. We just
pause there. It's almost like they did the thing that you want to see them do.
Yeah,
it's not their winning recipe, but then they still lost the game. It's like, 347 passing yards for Desmond Ritter. Drake London, 10 catches for 172, but they lost. And when they don't throw the ball well, they have these ugly wins. So I don't even know what to think about the Falcons.
Exactly. Like, oh boy, Ritter's thrown all over the place. London and Pitts got the end zone. Holy smokes. I mean, this is what we want. And, Tampa, meanwhile, hasn't run all year. They put up 148. Close game. I kind of feel like you play this 100 times. It might be 51-49 or 50-50, but huge win for the Bucs. And again, Atlanta's a tough team to wrap my head around a little bit right now.
Zach Wilson showing signs of life for the New York Jets.
He was good.
That was the best game in his NFL career easily. 300 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, defeating the Texans 30-6. The Jets now 5-8, Texans 7-6. The real story here from the Texans' point of view is the injury to CJ Stroud, you never want to see a young, up and coming star player like that get hurt. Looks like concussion protocol for him. So we don't have any details on that one, but you hope for the best with CJ Stroud and the Texans, because that's just not, lose the rest of your games. Don't get that potential star quarterback hurt for you for the future of that franchise.
Yeah. And this game really wasn't close. The other injury was Nico Collins went out very early, and they already didn't have Tank Dell. I kind of feel for Houston, but no matter what, I feel like they're playing with house money. They're in a good spot in a super crowded AFC. I think they're probably in trouble, that they're kind of turning into a pumpkin a little bit. But I want to stress the Jets a little bit. I mean, as bad as their offense has been all year, 98% of the time, defenses can't keep it up. Like I'm on the field all the time and I'm injured and you guys aren't helping me and I get one sip of Gatorade and I'm back in, like usually by December that side of the ball is just giving up the ship. Jets haven't at all. That D has played really, really well start to finish and is one of the best defenses in the league.
Well, look, and when you get good quarterback play, they're going to be a good team, and they just haven't. And they did in this one. And look what happens. You walk away in the second half and score a whole bunch of points and win 30-6. So
yeah, it's kind of a fantasy nugget. But one thing I have given them credit for, they always get the ball to Wilson and Hall. They have two guys that are dangerous, and there's never a game where it's like, oh, you only had 2 touches. Like they always get the ball to those two, and they're great.
Man. Trevor Lawrence gutting it out. I did not expect Trevor Lawrence to play this week. High ankle sprain. That's a month-long, maybe plus injury. And give him props for gutting it out, playing in this game. And then you got to throw it 50 times against one of the best defenses in the NFL. Nearly did make this close at the end. Browns led the whole game and hung on to win 31-27. Trevor Lawrence threw the ball 50 times, completed 28 of them. 3 touchdowns, 3 picks, clearly not 100%. The Jags might be in a little bit of trouble, but they're 8-5. Cleveland Browns improved to 8-5 here after this win. And Joe Flacco comes to the rescue for the Browns. Threw for 300 yards in this one, Matt. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 92 rating for Joe Flacco and those Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I mean, so we got a huge game next week, Baltimore at Jacksonville. But fortunately for the Jags, they finish with Tampa, Carolina, and Tennessee. So are they a contender or not? I don't know, but I bet they'll win their division, win 2 of those last 3 or 3 of those last 3 and be fine. Boy, I'm a Lawrence believer, though. I thought his receivers had a really tough time against a great secondary. I mean, Engram was okay, but more the corners locking down the receivers.
No Christian Kirk either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That Browns D, especially at home, is nasty. So I give Lawrence all the credit in the world. I think they'll win the division. They're moving the right direction, but maybe not as fast as Jags fans would like. My man Joe Flacco, though, they named him the starter for the rest of the season. He's been their best starter all year, including Deshaun Watson. I mean, I know it's only 2 games, but it's kind of like it's the old man version of what we just talked about with Browning and Purdy. Like he knows what he's doing. He knows where the blitz is coming from. He's thrown a lot of footballs. Maybe he ain't what he used to be, but competent above the neck with a decent arm quarterback play and what we have today in the NFL can go a long way. And
well rested. He hasn't had to grind through the whole season up to this point in off season.
Let's see what he's like after 3 more games. We were joking about that.
Yeah, it's going to be harder and harder to get up every morning, I think, for Joe Flacco, the more games he plays. Let's see. A few more notes here before we get out of here. Let's just end it here because it was the ugliest game of the season, the decade. I don't know. You got to go back a while. 3-0. And it took the 4th quarter to finally get a field goal and get points on the board for the Vikings that are in a good spot at 7-6 here. 3-0 win over the 5-8 Las Vegas Raiders.
I guess they're in a good spot. They are mathematically, but they're pulling their quarterback and Jefferson gets hurt again. That breaks your heart. I think the Raiders are really bad, and I think the Vikings aren't much better, but they might get in the playoffs. I threw out there is what Flores is doing is remarkable with a defense that really doesn't have much talent. I mean, I threw out on Twitter, is he going to be a head coach next year? I think he certainly should be back in the mix.
Yeah, and the Raiders are, their fans are like, well, do you bench O'Connell and put Garoppolo back in? Because this is unacceptable offense. And you got Devontae Adams, who's just floundering now, 7 catches for 53 yards. They're trying to force him the ball. He had one big play at the end to get him even to that point, yardage-wise.
I bet he's not a Raider next year. And then Josh Jacobs gets hurt too. And I mean, it's all downhill.
It's a bad situation. They had a nice little midseason bump after changing coaches, but there's not talented enough football team. The Raiders aren't, and the Vikings with what they have at quarterback are, eventually kind of screwed, but they're mathematically still in this thing. And a lot of bad there with the Vikings and Raiders, historically bad. I thought I'd save the numbers. Let's see if I can find it real quick, but you got to go back to, let's see. Gosh.
While you're looking, I just looked at who they're playing next week. Vegas plays the Chargers. I mean, is Staley even going to be the coach of the Chargers at that point? The Chargers won a game 6-0 a week ago. I mean, like, you talk about teams in bad spots. Herbert's hurt.
I can't even find it anymore.
Okay,
I know you got to go back years, and I think 2007. Yeah, there we go. It's the first 3-0 game since 2007. So we're going back 15 years, and just the 7th 3-0 game in the Super Bowl era since 1966. So there you go. Do you remember by the way, do you remember the Pittsburgh Steelers 3-0 win over the Miami Dolphins in 2007? Because before that, you got to go back to 1993.
If it rings a bell, I think I'm bad about remembering such things, but I think there was an unbelievable monsoon in Miami. Like I remember a punt.
I'm looking at a video of it. There's a punt
that just sticks
and just stays in. It's like you stuck your 9-iron on the green, right? It's just like it just doesn't bounce and sticks in the mud. It's one of the worst fields I've ever seen in just this one little clip. So that's
excusable then,
right? Exactly.
Right. Not what happened yesterday in a dome.
All right, we got to get out of here. Some good football, some bad football, and a whole lot of fun in week 14. We got a Monday nighter to go. And we need your questions for this week's mailbag as well. So get them to us at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, or in the YouTube comments. Matt and I back tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.